closing item 6, moving to item 7, latest news from the central office. Presented by Milja Leinonen. Yes, welcome to the meeting. On my behalf, I'm the vice chair of the board this year, so I'm here to tell you about the news from the central office on what we've done in January and February. There's a kind of very sad and unfortunate news. You probably all know that a student of ours went missing on the 7th February, and they were found dead a week later. We will hold an event, a vigil, to remember this person, and you can leave out candles outside the Chem building. What AYYE has done thus far, we have provided support for our associations, also spread the knowledge about crisis help, and we also have coordinated two kind of debriefing events. One with the closest friends of this victim, and one a more public event, and also FSHS, study psychologists and the Aalto chaplains will be present at these events. We also communicated with the media. Olli has done it, been in contact with the media, and we also offered ad hoc support for members after the person was found on the 16th February at the central office. And it was open to all our members, but no one actually showed up. But yes, we offered this kind of. Then moving on, we have new employees. Some of them started already last year, some this year. Teemu Heinomäki started as our IT support, and Saana Lehtinen started as our communications specialist. Also Mikko Kauhanen will be, for this spring, will work as a substitute for Minna Mäkitalo as an educational policy expert. And Marianne Honkasaari started as a project worker for the student center. And she was also a member of the board last year, responsible for the student center project. Then news from the community. AYYE 10 years old. It's not really started at the start of the year. We're very eager, excited about this at the office. We've sent invitations to our special guests, and also sign up has started, and the actual sign up will start on 17th of March. Also, illustrated historical publication, you can already order it when signing up, so please do that if you're interested. Also for AYYE 10, what's good to know is that on Saturday we'll have this replay at Dipoli, which is an interactive event where you can experience again the kind of the best events of AYYE held during the last 10 years. So please come all, it's free and very exciting. Our volunteers and events. Well, the volunteers have now been trained and they have been also organized. We have approximately 200 volunteers this year, which is about 50 years than usual, because of the AYYE 10 section and the committees related to it are so big. There are many people. And we will have our first events already this week and next week, the replay I mentioned, and also next week Gravitaatio. And also the renovation at the Polytech Museum is moving forward, and we hope that the museum will be available to use as soon as possible. And also we appointed the sections, the Teekkari section and Aava section. You can see the composition of the sections here, also the campus section and the EduJoru section. In addition to these, as a new section, we also have this artistic activities section, where we have delightfully many people there. And the committees that work under these sections are the festive section and the tradition section. And within AVA there is the festival committee and project committee, and also outdoor games and mosaic. Then moving on to real estate issues, there will be very interesting developments at the start of the year. We have established 2 new groups. One is this real estate management group, and its purpose is to help prepare decisions made by the board and representative council. And the idea here is that the kind of timelines for real estate projects are very long, 5 to 10 years, whereas the board rotates every year. So it doesn't kind of have more kind of a long-term decision making in real estate issues. It has already been established and it has organized itself, and there's already been discussion about preliminary survey on developing real estate targets in Otaniemi. This is a preparatory body. And members for this administrative group are the person in the board responsible for real estate and housing, also the chief of our real estate unit, and also a service manager responsible for the housing office and services, as well as our financial manager. We will also are about to establish a real estate steering group, and its purpose is to be this kind of more involving, plan-based, workshop-based entity, the aim of which is to try to look into themes related to real estate, about to answer questions, what is the best student's life in the world? And so the related themes are community, club spaces, sustainable development. So when a real estate sector starts planning new real estate projects, then they will already have planned out that how many new club spaces we need, for example. And the steering group can, for example, visit HOAS to see if they have some good practices we could adopt, for example. Here you can see the composition of the steering group. Here we also have Kimmo Saira, responsible member on the board for real estate, and some kind of representative from the university, AYYE employees, also our real estate and financial committee members from there, and also Emily Johnson from the board, responsible for campus issues, and then also other volunteers who want to join the group. Then moving on to services, housing and facilities. I'm glad to say that last year at the Representative Council we decided to facilitate the process of getting your own friends to your shared flats. So you can propose your own friend to move in there. And also almost all one-off rental facilities, the renovation has been finished, except for the Jämärän Taival 3 game space is still under renovation. And then news from the board. Board started its operations in January and had the familiarization period, also oriented on to their respective portfolios. We also were present at the SYL opening seminar and at the tech seminar. We met with Aalto management, other important interest groups, also visited the Finnish Parliament, and are also actively involved in the implementation of the newly published strategy for Aalto. Here you can see a good picture from the SYL opening seminar. There's very good atmosphere there. We enjoyed it. There's also the latest news from the central office. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask. So any questions on the news from the central office? Yes. So from Luova, about the real estate steering group, a question. There are other people who want to join the group. How are these people selected? I think Kimmo can answer this question better than I. Yes. The idea is that kind of trying to find out people who are interested in this and who have been involved in campus matters previously. We hadn't really thought out this process that much, how to actually select these persons, but we will look into it very soon. Any other questions? Apparently no, so thank you. Closing item 7, moving to item 8. So next we have representative from OLL, the Finnish Students Sports Federation. Actually the chairperson of OLL to present the latest news from OLL.
Hello everyone, it says Student Sports Federation, so let's start with some exercise. So stand up and do some exercise. First task, throw some high fives. Increase the difficulty level, take both of your hands up front, back and then both hands. Thank you very much. Moving from here on out, you may choose in which position you wish to enjoy the presentation. My name's Aalto and I am this year's Student Sports Federation chairperson. Last year I was in the AYYE board. I was in charge of social politics and municipal advocacy and influence, and in this role it's nice to be here. Let's move on to the matters at hand. So, why am I here? What am I talking about? 3 things. What is the Student Sports Federation? Then, not moving, sedentariness, a common theme across Finland. And third, we have advocacy, current affairs. So, what is the Student Sports Federation? I could talk this subject through for 2 days, but I only have 15 minutes or so, so I will summarize a lot. So you might have some questions that might be unanswered, which is why after the presentation you have the opportunity to comment or ask questions or do some challenges if you wish. OLL, Student Sports Federation, is a national sports advocacy and service association which works on both national and international projects. We focus on national advocacy the most, and when discussing sports sector associations we are very exceptional as an organization in that we are more focused on advocacy and influence rather than organizing sports activities. OLL is the largest student federation or association. We have almost 150,000 members. Or one member associations. If you clarify this a bit, AYYE is one member association, and a member of that is a normal student. So how are we so big? The reason is that we represent both university students but also technical university students. So we both work on both sides of the field, which gives us kind of a broader spectrum to do our advocacy work in. OLL was set up in 1924, so in a few years we'll have our 100 years of OLL parties, and it's nice to say to this group that OLL was organized by, or set up by the Polytechnical Sports Federation, PUS, and KY, among other organizations. Our organization has 5 members of the board, 3 of which work full-time, and then we have 5 members of staff. We have a budget of about a bit over $500,000. So when comparing to AYYE, you notice that organizational scale is a lot smaller than AYYE, for example. Our activities include advocacy and influencing. This is the biggest field where we work at and work on to understand what kind of surroundings we work in. Here are some stakeholder groups: the Olympic Committee, the Ministry of Culture and Education, and political parties. I could just continue a couple of dozen more stakeholders, but some to mention. So we work a lot with sports and physical activity sectors, and our task there is to keep the voice of students heard. We talk about youth education, basic education, school people, just senior people as well, but usually people tend to forget about students when discussing different groups, and that's where we step in. And what have we managed to do with our tasks? For example, in the last 10 years, we managed to lobby to the Education and Cultural Ministry about 2 million to develop the sports activities that universities have. And relating this, for example, with the Olympic Committee, we visit the ministry to keep sports on the table and hope that people take it into heart. Secondly, we have training events. We have sports sector meetings biannually, also sports tutor training. We had both of those last week, and we had representatives from AYYE and from the board, for example. In addition to this, we have student Finnish national championships and international sports events as well. And I have to say that we are kind of a license holder for coordination for student national championships, but we don't actually host them. They are mainly hosted by sports organizations and student organizations. We just assist. But we do send representatives to international competitions. But the student top sports are nowadays done by the Olympic Committee. So it's mainly not done by OLL nowadays. Not in our agenda, as it were. Third, we have our international issues. We have the FISU, which is International University Sports Federation, and European University Sports Associations, which of OLL is a member of. FISU is completely global, and on a European scale we have the USA. FISU organizes the Universiades. Maybe somebody might know of them, one of the largest events regarding sports in the world, and it might be depicted to the field that FISU's current chairperson was chosen at the start of the year and he's now the Russian sports minister, so quite a large field. These were our core activities. In addition, we offer membership benefits, services to all students within our sphere of influence. All AYYE associations can search for insurance for accidents, for sports activities. We also have music playing privileges and rights, cut participation fees for OSM, discounts for climbing centers, sports equipment, some licenses, and a few discounted events, for example, the Helsinki City Run. So these are all for you, all of you. You can check out oll.fi/edu.t. After this meeting, you may check out some of our benefits and instructions on how to utilize the benefits. My second topic being sedentariness. Then again, it's not something that concerns only university students, but concerns our entire nation. Sedentariness costs about 3 billion euros annually to society. This 3 billion is double compared to, for example, the university's basic funding from the state. According to the worst interviews, this current 3 billion euros actually is a lot larger than just 3. So national health relations when we're talking about a large issue. The national budget is about 55 billion, so compare that to 3. What does this mean for students? Only a third of students move enough to benefit their health, actually, in relation to that. What we actually unified by is that university students and technical university students sit almost 11 hours a day, and the detriment caused by sitting is comparable to, for example, smoking tobacco. What you also need to note is that even active sports does not counter these problems. Then again, sports itself develops the skill to learn, your memory, and a positive mental health attitude, among other things. When looking at the physical structure of the brain, we notice large differences with people when comparing people who do sports to those who don't. Then again, what I have noticed personally is that in student communities we talk about mental health a lot. That is a topic of focus, of course, but there's not a lot of talk that sports must be one of the best ways to prevent any problems from arising. Then we have a solution to this called the Moving University, the korkeakoulu project, and also I will also talk about the municipal elections 2021. Some of you might have heard about the Moving School program. If you heard about the Moving School program, raise your hand in Finland. Somebody might have, and some have. So about 90% of basic elementary schools are involved in the Liikkuva Koulu program, which has been expanded to youth education and second stage education. About 50% of the schools are involved. And during this year, this will be expanded to also concern universities, which is an achievement by OLL and several years of work. So what do we mean? Is that the aim is to have the activity culture and environment to support learning and physical well-being activities at universities. Even though we here might have good services, Unisport, but the national populace is not moving enough, which is why we need to take these things into account as part of the everyday of students. So it's just not enough that we just wait that, okay, when I've done my studies, maybe you'll just go for the gym, do some exercise for 1 hour or 2. So how will we reach this goal? Is that here OLL will act as a facilitator and a coordinator on a national level, and we help universities by giving out information, skills and motivation to succeed. We maybe compare this role to, for example, like on a basic school level, elementary school level, the Ministry of Education coordinates this, but at universities, OLL is the coordinator for these activities. We aim to host training, do a network service for the people and entities participating, have an information bank for information, and to also share good practices and also create a joint project with 5 to 10 chosen universities for 2021-2022. What's also rare in the university field is that the Ministry of Education and Culture says that they have money up for grabs just only requires to apply for the money. And in this stage, Aalto has an excellent opportunity to get involved. Second topic being the municipal elections 2021. Why is OLL talking about the municipal elections right now? They're hosted about a year from now, on the 18th of April 2021. But why is this important for OLL? It's actually a question of money. The nation uses about government's budget about 166 million annually for sports. When you look at the municipalities, it's 900 million, which is about 5.4 times as much as the government uses on a national level. So 900 million. So sports federations have a lot to win in these elections regarding this. What OLL is doing is that we, of course, lobby and advocate on party national electoral programs already at this stage, but we also support and encourage local student services and associations to take these things into account with their achievements and goal programs. That's kind of a joker, like an extra bonus. So what does this cost? OLL membership costs 60 euro cents per student. So this is this first euro bill here. And the Ministry of Teaching and Culture likes sports because keeping health up is a lot cheaper than just treating the sick. So when the students place a euro on the table, the ministry will respond always with not one, not two, but 3 euros. And this is what we use to develop and influence and advocate for your health. So the students dole out about 90,000, while the ministry gives about 320,000 euros. As a student, this seems kind of a good deal. More information on OLL can be found on our social media channels, web pages, so check them out and see if you're interested. Find out more. Thank you. And now we have the opportunity to take some questions if you had any. Do we have any questions? Yes, Lammi Proarte. Why did you just tell us all of this? Yes, Lammi Proarte, so it's a very important subject, but why is this been told to us just now? Do you mean just generally this presentation? Okay, because Aalto Student Union, AYYE, is a member, so I'm the AYYE godparent this year, so I wanted to come and say hello. As a general comment is that Reps and Council usually has in its meeting greetings from different kinds of stakeholder groups within our sphere of influence. Lukkanen schisma. If we really have this increased funding for helping with sports activities through the government, is the idea that Aalto or AYYE starts doing a project to get pause on that money? It's a very good question. Primarily we're talking about the ideas that universities are involved, but when we're talking about this project-based single-serve funding, usually the benefit is that the project involves parties outside of just the university, so it's a positive thing, or would be a positive thing if AYYE would be involved. But then again, AYYE has an opportunity to advocate here, to influence the university to wake up and rise up to the challenge and apply for that fund. Any other questions? I depict that no, thank you. And the proposal is that the Representative Council decide to record the news of the Finnish Student Sports Federation. Closing item 8, moving on to item 9, report on the Central Election Committee on the 2019 Representative Council elections, with Peter Heliste presenting. Hello, dear RepCo members. I'm here to talk about the ideas of the Central Election Committee for the last undertaken election. We did a report that has been delivered to you as a longer document, and I would here have some main points. Our goals for the elections, how we succeeded, and some summary on what we would wish that we would do in the next elections. We also have some time for questions and comments from all of you. We hosted a query after it, but as all electric surveys, we really didn't get that many replies. You may ask and comment during the presentation. I don't have a lot of slides, so you will be getting your voices heard very soon. But if you have a question, just raise up your hands. So, started by the goals. We had 5 goals set up during the spring, but were approved by the CEC. First off, the elections are held fairly and in good spirit, and so that people have a good, safe feeling to participate in these elections, and that they can bring their opinions forth, they can be represented, they can be there, and there is no negative backlash from it. The 2 campuses are treated equally. Both Otaniemi and Mikkeli campuses will be represented equally, so all students have the right to be up for candidacy. Third, is that the elections can be seen and heard. It was a larger goal. We wanted to raise the voting percentage to 42, but all in all, that people have information regarding the election, and it will be seen on social media, web pages, and all around. We, for example, did some footwork at the Aalto parties with the CEC and gave some alcohol-free sparkly wine and had people regarding the election machinery systems. Some ideas. Also, setting up a coalition should be made easy. To set up a new coalition should be, for example, these elections. That the process would be nice and easy. For example, the electoral chiefs that have a large slice of cake on their plate regarding the elections. It's a big job, as we thought as a CEC, how we can serve the candidates and the coalitions better. And also, the last goal was trilinguality, that especially all international material, all official material will be available on all 3 languages, Finnish, English and Swedish. And all communications could be undertaken with all 3 languages. And in the student union, social media in English, which is the most far-reaching language. Then, how did we succeed? 33.39% turnout, which was not 42, but a bit smaller than last time. We didn't get up to 42. Yes, like I said, we were pretty satisfied, but a bit panicky at some stages. Even though during the election date, when we had the 20-something during the election day, and then we had kind of a rush. Maybe this might end up badly, but we had kind of a landslide of votes at the very last minute. That is usually pretty evident in national levels as well. We ended up at 33.39 regarding trilinguality. Another measurement is that all material was available in English and Swedish and Finnish, all 3 languages. Some complications were present, for example, in the election questionnaires which kind of did not reflect the ideology after our translations. That we should maybe had a look at them. Do they correlate? Because translators might not have the context in when they do the translation. These were the only things that we had the measurements. We had the equal opportunities. We sent the flyers and the posters. Check that out. But otherwise, I'd like to hear from you at this stage on how did it go down. Anybody have any questions, comments? From a user's point of view. Down the back.
You can go first, I think it makes more sense.
Hello? Yes, it's on. It's for the stream. Parkkinen from Skisma. Not Skisma, but vihreämpi Aalto. That was our electoral officer for the elections, and I'd like to give some feedback that the marketing was kind of minimized in a sense that the university, student union, social media, it wasn't really separate from all communications. There's all kinds of communications taking place, so the elections didn't kind of stand out. They are big, but people don't really know that we have the elections for the RepCo, and they should be with more oomph in the future. And of course, we created the campus section, did these, what were they called? What are these? The wooden thingies where you could staple your own posters. But then the wooden thingies were never taken anywhere from the library wall. So we kind of placed our posters there, but they were kind of in the library instead of being in front of Vere, where we actually have people going instead of the library back wall. And so AYYE could maybe do some legwork. Maybe create some A0 level posters about the electoral coalition system. So the budget for all the posters doesn't really quite cut it. We'd need larger prints. Thank you for this. Of course, we had this kind of situation where practically all staff was different, and this silent information doesn't really flow. What we found on the report, we tried to track it down, but if it wasn't in the report, we really couldn't think on how things go down. This kind of comment is very valuable. And at this stage, I want to say to all of you that we discussed with the group chairs on Monday on how would we get the feedback from this discussion. If you have any ideas or thoughts, you may send them to me by email, and I will compile the thoughts into a dossier that I will be handing out to the next CEC. So I can give the email to the RepCo mailing list after this. But all feedback is very, very welcome. Next question. Do we have a second microphone so we don't have to wait? Yes.
Is it cool if I speak in English?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, thanks. First, I talked to my classmates who, of course, participated, and one thing they really liked was the candidate matching system. I think that was very positive feedback about it. Of course, it was a bit lengthy, but at least you were able to find candidates who match with your needs, so that was something they were happy about. Secondly, I think there was enough marketing done in terms of who are the people you can vote for, but not enough marketing done in terms of what are they actually going to be doing in the council. And I think I speak generally, of course, from an international perspective, and a lot of my work was actually explaining to my classmates what does the representative council actually decide And so if we could get help on that aspect. So I personally saw a lot of candidate pictures everywhere, and that was very useful because you know who you could vote for. And if you see them in person, you can talk to them. But it was hard to know what are they actually deciding if I was just a general student and if I didn't take time to find out what the council does. If that information could be made more visible, it would be super useful.
That's a good point. We tried to do something a bit like that, but we mainly did it on we basically created a sort of a short summary on the election website, so ayyyye.fi/something, about like the basic facts about the representative council and what they actually do and what they decide on. But actually, you raise a very good point that we could have also, say, prepared a one-pager for candidates, so sort of a talking points like what to say when people ask you about what the representative council does, and that's definitely something. If we could put that forward to the next central election committee, that would be really helpful.
Other questions? Saura from Luova. Now that I dug through some of the ideas from what I had dotted down during the elections, in addition to communications, what I thought was that the timetable, because the fall is quite short and intensive, especially at the start, and that groups have a large responsibility to gather all the candidates, organize the electoral events. It would be good that all of these could be gotten through earlier in the spring and locked down, that we can get a budget, you can make your facility bookings, because during the orientation week organizing things in addition to everything was kind of challenging. And in addition, there's all kinds of activities taking place, so the elections might get trampled by all the other stuff happening. So these are issues that should or could develop in the future. Start earlier in the spring, I'd say. This is something that we also focused on with the CEC in our reporting and the recommendations given. And that could we open the CEC recruitment at the end of this year, at the same time as all the other volunteer recruitments open. This is of course chosen by the board, but this is an idea to toss around and think on. Last time, of course, we opened the recruitment in February, but we had the CEC set up only by extending the period of applications because we couldn't get enough people for the start. And I think we had our first meeting in April, May. But in the sense that at the start of the year, if we could have maybe gotten the CEC by January, February, and then we could start doing some ideas by the previous report, discuss things with the representative council on what to do better, more time to think, more time to react and prepare different kinds of regulations, different kinds of rule sets, instructions on what material we could provide. And maybe electoral chiefs, we could gather them up and have some sort of discussion with them. Anything else? Short and precise. Thank you for that. More on these goals. This is kind of vague to me, that I would actually like more data on visibility, maybe some metrics. And based on some feedback, if you're doing a report, maybe some comparative numbers to earlier results, and maybe on marketing metrics, maybe Facebook reaching, and all kinds of other data points would be nice. So nothing else to add. I am aligned with those thoughts as well.
Any other questions? Yes. Aalto from Vihreämpi Aalto. The election aid, it was very difficult for a freshman especially to fill in, because you had to know a lot about the AYYE's activities in order to fill it in. And then active students already most likely already know who to vote, so we should make it more easily understandable and more accessible. the voting aid application. I think it would be good to add kind of background summary about the strategy of the AYYE, for example. So kind of a more background information for people using the voting aid. Any other questions or comments? Apparently no. Yes, I would like to present this. Well, we will try to start the preparation for the elections earlier on in the future. So these are proposals what we should do in the future. Then also we would see that it would be important to clarify the rules and the guidelines, as we saw from these elections, that it's easy to write the regulations beforehand, but it's kind of difficult to evaluate, predict how they will be reflected, the rules. And because they have already been kind of locked in, we cannot do any kind of big changes on the fly. We just have to interpret the existing rules. And if there comes up a case where we see that we would like to do it differently, but the rules prohibit it, that we can't do something what we want to do because of the rules that we have done. So that's why we think it should be good to also the feedback I received now to communicate forward and clarify the rules and guidelines in the future.
Yeah, in terms of the second point about clarifying the rules and guidelines, I think that would be super important because many exchange students, especially those who come for a whole year as opposed to one semester, they were not sure whether they're able to vote or not. And then oftentimes when they sent the message, they never got a reply because they were not able to log into the voting system and they didn't get a reply quickly enough that their vote could be counted either.
Okay. That's something we need to look into, definitely.
Okay. Okay. Moving on with this. Making communications more accessible. And also good points about the voting aid application, about the communications, clarifying things for our members. And lastly, the actual voting software used for the voting. This is the biggest of these 4 points, because the software we had was the same as we used in 2017. And when with the IT support person, we started working on it. We saw that it's outdated pretty badly in 2 years, and it was kind of difficult to get it working. And still it didn't work perfectly as it should. Well, the IT support person said that for the next elections, you should really look into a different system or heavy updating of the existing system well in advance. So this is kind of probably a task for the board. And I also asked the IT support person to map the different options for the next elections, because organizing a paper vote without the software would be very have a big workload and also would affect the voter turnout negatively. And we also we'd have to have this more voting booths and things like that. Those may require financial investments to update or replace the voting software. So my last slide. Any other questions, comments? Apparently no. Thank you for the presentation. Also, a few words. Yes, I just realized that this is my last representation council meeting ever. I started here in 2013 in the council. And also I'd just like to say that it's been a great honor and adventure to be a member of the representation council, to be involved in the work for 6 years. Just kind of reminded me of the first steps of a baby giraffe. Because the whole thing started with kind of with a 2-meter drop, and then we had to find out how to get back on our feet, how to eat, how to drink, and then to find our own place in the world. So there's been a wild ride, and there's been a lot of conflicts with the university internally. I had to make a lot of tough decisions, for example selling Dipoli. I went almost to the Supreme Court because of this one nasty case. But we've also moved forward. Our old wounds have healed. And to be honest, also when I come visit the campus, I don't do that often anymore. I see that how much things have improved. Like small things, for example, the new shirts for the Represent Council members. I'm very jealous of them. And also the big things that we are able to work together. We're almost all on the same campus, well, except from Mikkeli, and it's good. I think it's good that they have their own campus in Mikkeli, and so on. And also on a personal level, I've also experienced the growth of the Aalto community, worked with a diverse group of people, solved problems, and also made amazing new friends, and people who I can trust and talk about difficult issues. And also the Represent Council has been an amazing place to learn new things, to challenge myself, to go out of my comfort zone. It's been a good place for me to practice public performance and also argumentation and other things that are very valuable but are not so much taught on the courses. And I find myself the direction that what I want to do. I may not be a researcher in the future. I will do something else. Also, I tried to say no when enough is enough. That's why I went as a chairperson of the Central Election Committee, so I could leave the Represent Council. So if you feel the same here, I very much recommend joining the Central Election Committee. But now I want to say thank you and good luck in your future. Heard a very beautiful speech from an old Represent Council member. You can see that we're reaching our 10-year anniversary, since there are so many of these reminding old days. And I suggest that before moving to the next item, we could have a small break. So the meeting is now on a break, on hold, and we will come back in 10 minutes. Yes, good. Continue with the meeting at 6:39. Moving on to item 10, latest news on the student center. If the presenters could please come here, Hankari, Johnson and Sair. Hello, good evening. Marian Hankasaari. I was a member of the board last year, and now I'm the project coordinator for the student center. I'm Kimmo Saira, member of the board this year, responsible for real estate, housing and the student center, which is why I'm here. As you can see, there are 3 names here, but there are also 2 of us here, because unfortunately Emily is sick, so she couldn't make it here. So it's kind of a softer landing in terms of English. Because now, in the future, these presentations will be in English, but now these will be in Finnish since Emily is not here. But on the slides we have both Finnish and English. So let's start with a brief recap of the project. How many of you took part in the training related to Student Center or have watched the recording of it? Yes, so not everyone has seen it or was present. So we'll have a brief recap, and I'd like to remind you that it's important that when you will be making the actual decision, it's very advisable to go through the recording of the training event to really know what you're deciding on. So let's start the basics. What is the Student Center? It's a joint venture by AYYE, KY and TF for a common building for students located here, very on the middle of the campus. The Student Center, the vision, the shared vision is this: a place for students to meet and spend their time, a place which all Aalto people have reason to visit. And this is AYYE's main reason for why we are involved in the project. So what's been done thus far? In 2017, the Representative Council accepted the preconditions regarding the Student Center. Also in 2017, we finished the first draft of the project plan. And in 2018, the Representative Council stated that our vision was not clear enough and the expenses were too high. So in 2018 we involved the members very much and updated the spatial program. In 2019 there were a lot of turns and twists. The most important one is we hired a common project manager. Also the Representative Council decided on the next steps for the project. Here we'll now open up a few terms so you know what we're talking about. So the project plan that I mentioned, it's a document that contains all the relevant information about the project. And it defines the scope, contents and expenses. So for example, the spatial program is part of the project plan. Then the design proposal means the architect's drafts for the building and proposals how the objectives of the project plan could be executed. So what the building will contain, the key parts are these open facilities for entire Aalto community. For example, the restaurant, cafe, pub, living room, working and hangout spaces open to everyone, resting corner. Also different kinds of student services so that they're easily available in a good location. So our own service office, university student services, pop-up services, a chance to meet with alumni, and also corporate relations related facilities. They will also have services and facilities for associations, for example a meeting room, also versatile facilities that can be used for parties, multi-purpose space, and also a lot of requests were made to have a dance hall. Also there's kind of a multi-use arena that could be used for sit or represent council meetings or for a movie night, for example. And since the office will move to the student center, we need to have versatile office facilities. Also shared spaces for volunteers. Shared here is very important. Also shared lounge for the different offices. Also kind of club rooms for volunteers and a shared club room lounge. So this is kind of the main things that the student center will have. This is not everything, but then about the target schedule, so you know what's coming up in the future for you and for the next representative councils. So now it's 2020, so this year the plan is to decide on the project plan and also decide on whether we will commit to the project. Next year spring we continue the planning and also approve the cost estimates and master plan designs, and then also later in the year do about more kind of a detailed plans. Then in 2022 we'll decide on whether to start the construction, and then in the autumn of 2023 the building should be finished. And Kimmo can take over from here. So we're talking about workforce, our human resources for this project. We have a working group which meets every week from AYYE. These are our members in the working group, familiar to you, Emily Johnson and me and Marianne here. From KY there are Rasmus Ylinen, a board member in KY, and from TF Alexander Björklund, a member of TF's board, and also Walter Berggren, who was the board member for TF last year. And also Milja Sikanen will act as the facilitator when needed for the working group. Then more about the personal resources. Sarako is our project manager. Juha Sarkorpi is the lead project manager, and Tuomas Kostia is the contractee engineer. Then we have the steering group. A working group that works on operational level. Doesn't kind of big strategic decisions. And it has one expert member and one board member from each party. Everyone has Emily and Heikki members. What about current issues? So the issues that are now very current, selecting the architect, because we have not chosen an architect yet. And this is the background. When we have this mountain man competition of the chemist block, it really affects the selection procedure. Next, we'll have a meeting with the landowners, Acre and Senatti. Listen to reviews on how the architecture competition will affect this decision. Then with the ownership structure model, TF wants to possibly have their own real estate company in the building, so we'll have to look into how it would affect the building process and maintenance and other things. And we will order a report about the different ownership structure models. And the decisions about these models must be made together with all the parties based on the objectives we all want to achieve with the selected model. Then the spatial program, the facilities program, that is. TF has their own project plan. that kind of the furthest along in this, and Sarako has met with KY and AYYE separately on this special program. We are now working with Pirko regarding our office and meeting spaces. So next we will work on the spatial program together. Most of the spatial program is in order, but we still need to have a discussion about the shared spaces. Then about fundraising, because the training didn't really discuss this topic, so TF has prepared their own fundraising campaign for several years now. It will be a major part of their project funding, but for AYYE and KY we haven't had that much given that much thought to fundraising. Last year we had discussion of the common fundraising with all three parties, because we see this would be the most efficient way to do it. And we also discussed about the participation of the Aalto-University, because they have more experience in this kind of projects and about fundraising, so we could have a good kind of expertise and their views on the subject. Well, we already had some discussions regarding this with Aalto. And what has happened now regarding fundraising? Well, AYYE had a meeting with the chair of our Corporate Relations Council and also an experienced alumnus. Experience in fundraising, that is. And we discussed with them how to start the fundraising process. And next we'll have a discussion in the Corporate Relations Council meeting next week. Another current topic that we talked about a bit before, sustainability, sustainable development, which is very important to us. It's been in our strategy for a long time. And we also discussed shortly with the other parties about sustainability. And we are very happy to find out that all parties find sustainability important. And they have their own objectives related to it. Because we really can't build the building if some part is environmentally friendly and another is not. So it's good that we are in the same boat here. We don't have yet the clear next steps, but we need to clarify that issue also with the project manager. And we'll also have a preliminary meeting with the university. So there may be a collaboration with the university's project Climate Change, the Human Perspective, that they could possibly help us with this. But we will inform you as they progress. So, what's next? The next steps. So work with different topics and areas and try to solve disagreements and questions. We'll solve them together with KY and TF, and also with the project manager Sarako, and then also internally with the board, financial directorate, and the finance and real estate committee. And the next steps for the Representative Council, I will inform the Representative Council about the latest news regarding the project, and possibly gather some questions to guide the work in the project. There will be bigger discussions in the finance and real estate committee's meetings. And you also have the possibility to influence the project in the group chairs meetings. And the decisions on the project plan and construction design should be made in fall. Then we have the Representative Council's training on the 23rd of January. As it was shared with you just a couple of days ago. It will answer many of your questions you may have, so you should really go through that. Thank you. Any questions? We have a lot of time for questions. We didn't have that much time in the training, so now if you have any kind of questions you didn't get to ask then, you can ask, or questions about the presentation. Yliopilaskunta from Waltti. I mentioned this ownership model report or survey. Last year we ordered from PVC, we ordered this ownership model survey, which was handled at least internally within the office. So this new survey would be ordered in together with the two other parties, if I understand correctly. So what do you think, how much new information there will be for AYYE, since we've already had this kind of report last year, and can we utilize the previous report in this new one? Yes, we will of course use it as the starting point, but this kind of it was more focused on the taxation issues, so this will be kind of more wide-ranging, this new report. Of course we'll use the last year's report as the starting point, but we'll try to get more information on different possibilities and about this new model proposed by TF, because we really don't know much about that proposed model yet, what it would mean. And no other questions at this point, so raise your hand if you still have some. Lamme from Poroarte, you mentioned that both Senaatti and Acre own this land, this plot. So what will we do? Will we lease it or will we acquire the plot? Or what will we do regarding the land? Most likely we will rent it, but if we can acquire it ourselves, it will be very tempting to do it. So we are still negotiating with Acre and Senaatti, but it's very likely that we will lease the plot. And first they will kind of make a transaction between two parties. So it will be transferred the land to Acre fully.
I wanted to ask that anything from the agreement that we plan of intent we signed earlier. People who were involved last year remember that also from the training that the plan of intent was left with so that AYYE approved it. KY returned it to preparation because it was not approved at TF and they wanted significant changes. We continued with that at the turn of the year. Start of the new year, it would be best that we would have a mutually approved document, but we ended in the situation where we decided that we could not find common ground for all issues. We couldn't agree on what should be there, and if we add a lot of things, we need to have a lot of discussions. So currently we are continuing with the plan without it because we don't want the work to end. And if we can agree on these issues in the near future, we will create the plan of intent. But it might be that we will not have a plan of intent. We are so far in the program plan that we'll just approve it as is. Saavela Luova, good presentation. Lots of information on what has happened since the turn of the year, but what was not mentioned, or at least I didn't notice, was the zoning, or the cities of Espoo's side of zoning that we discussed earlier a lot. At some points, is there some sort of timetable with the zoning, and does it create pressure to reach some sort of preliminary plan in the near future? And will this affect the choice of architect? That will it be somebody doing the plot zoning, or who will be the responsible party? Good point. So last fall we discussed zoning a lot, and we had the previous deadline at the end of March, but currently it's a bit open. That can we influence enough? It might get dragged out a bit. It's kind of waiting for the student center. We should be speaking about this topic with our meeting with Acre and Senaatti, because they, as the landowners, they have the largest say in this zoning issue. It's a bit open on how it will progress. the fact on the architect side is that AYYE will do the preliminary plan, and the only open issue is that we will have a different architect from AYYE, and if yes, then it will most likely come after we've done some work regarding the zoning, that we can actually take a stance on that. Any other questions? I also have questions regarding the zoning. How long should this project be in order for us to be able to actually influence the zoning? How far can we take this so that Aalto-University can actually represent this project as something that's actually going to happen instead of kind of a dream of the future? Well, we should have at least a very good understanding of our facilities plan and cooperation with AYYE in order for us to advocate and influence so that we can get the result that we want. And so far we are not yet in agreement, or we haven't had a lot of discussion with the landowners regarding the zoning, so that's something that we will have meetings with both parties in the future. Any other questions? Yes, we still have some questions. Thank you for a good presentation. If you look at the timeline, AYY's board and the office objective is to get the program plan approved during this year. What happens differently this year in regards to last year, so we don't end up in the same situation where we are right now for the last 4 years? Currently, we are working very efficiently with a project leader, project manager who has the needed skills to develop the project, so that when we don't know what should happen next, we have a professional who will tell us what should happen next and ensure that it does happen. They're also constantly in contact with the university, who is actually wishing that the project will go forward. So you have a 100% clearance or trust that it will be approved? Yes, we have the trust that we can develop this project forward. Any other questions? Thank you. I haven't done the training, but correct me if I'm wrong, and forgive me if I'm wrong. If I understood correctly, the idea is that we have a central office. What we have it there, we have spaces for KOI, space for TF, and multifunctional facilities, and kind of an arena open for everyone. If the point is that we will try to reach, what was the slogan? We're going to get pleasant collisions. What actually gets people to come to the student center? Why would they come there? People apart from student actives, like if we have guild halls and guild rooms, people will stay at the guild rooms and will not visit the space. It's a good question. The main point why we are involved here is all the other stuff that doesn't exist yet. So we aim to actually get this whole package that is not an exact breakdown. For example, project spaces, dance halls, arenas will be in general used, not just for associations, but the idea is that we can find something for everyone. So there'll be a diverse plethora of services available. There would be a restaurant, pub, cafe, where students want to spend time at. There will be different kinds of versatile facilities, Aalto living room, work spaces, hang around spaces. So the whole package would be so that diverse, and that one that would serve everyone. A continuation. It sounds very good. But do you have any data, or has there been kind of like a system, has there been a survey made that can we actually do this? We are talking about a lot of money. That is this plausible? Is this something that should be done? Do we have evaluations that will this even work to get the result that we want? Yes. Well, we have data on the needs, what is needed, what do people want, what do stakeholder groups want, what do different kinds of people want, and we have the role that we need to take everything into account. We did lots of that survey in 2018, and this planning stage is the part where we try to ensure that all of this is applicable within the confines of the budget that we can approve, that we can actually afford. So we're kind of designing that stage, and we also have the financial committee involved that will help with the financial side. Is this sensible for us? And to compile with the previous question, we have quite a lack for volunteer facilities in Otaniemi, and it will be a larger pressure in the future because from the Helsinki side we will lose facilities basically which will have been used by KY and other Aalto activities. And also when we discuss guild halls, we have at least one university, possibly two, that actually don't have guild halls because Otaniemi doesn't have spaces for these guild halls. So when and if the Aalto community wants to come together, there is quite much wanting for that. And to also compile on that, the previous question as a comment that I personally see that the role of the building would be an open space for everyone, even though there's guild halls, there's all kinds of facilities for members that are kind of serviceable for their purpose and is exclusive for that community. But some parties who are not active in an associations don't feel like they're welcome in a guild room. So maybe a joint space for everyone is what we need. And we have these examples. For example, look at Helsinki University, the thin corner. It's kind of a 100% use all the time, so it's kind of low threshold area where you could just go there and attend something interesting. We don't really have something like that in Otaniemi. Comment?
Yeah, sir. Can you go to the next slide and just explain the funding slide? Yeah, I think it was somewhere around, like maybe it was on possibly this slide. I'm not sure. It was basically where you had mentioned that TF was trying to secure its own funding model. Yeah, exactly. Could you explain what fundraising plans does this committee have, for example? Yeah, exactly.
So your question was what kind of plans we have?
Yeah, for the fundraising. If TF wants to have their own, then how do we proceed from our side, for example?
Yeah, so we don't have plans totally ready yet, but we hope to have also a common one, and we think that should be the biggest one. But also, of course, because TF has their own fundraising already, they shouldn't exclude each other's. So right now we are actually just discussing how to begin and how to figure out what's the best way to do it, what's the best way to do it together, what's the best way to do it just for AYYE, these kind of things. So we don't have ready answers yet.
From Luova, the biggest might not be the biggest problem, but what the facilities that we will have empty from the upcoming move when we have the student center, have a continuation plan in place for those facilities that will be left empty. You are meaning the current, like Keto and TF facilities. Yes, well, TF has their own plans that they will do. They can answer on their own part, but the aim is to zone housing for the plot, and we've had preliminary discussions with the university regarding selling kello that we own currently. Any other questions? Seems like no, so thank you. The proposal is that the Representative Council places on record the discussion regarding the student centre. Closing item 11, moving on to closing item 10 and moving on to item 11, student media news. Leinon, please. Hello again, and welcome to hear about the student media news. I present to you with what kind of student media people we have. I'm a vice chair in the board, but I'm also a media correspondent regarding student media. I also work with Laura Luotois, our Chief of Communications and Influence. You may send us email regarding pretty much anything regarding to student media. We would be more than happy to hear comments on anything you have regarding the topics. And also today I will be actually focusing on what we'll be hearing, what we'll be presenting, and what we'll be not be discussing today. So today the plan is that what kind of plans we have for this spring to the extra requirement for information that the Representative Council has returned the summary that the report that we prepared to return to the sender. So we have the title of how could we create student media with less money. What we'll be not doing today is details about Aino's purpose, Aino's tasks, and Aino's execution. And I hope that the Representative Council will take this into account with its comments. Here's some agenda. We have a new Representative Council. So that's why we have some backgrounds. What is Aino? Aino is our student magazine, what happened last year, and what we have discussed and decided, and how we ended up in the situation where we are right now, after which we'll discuss the current situation, and I will also tell you on what the work group has been doing, followed by discussion. And I'd be more than happy to hear any comments from you, and we'll also have a preliminary vote on what we should do. Right to the point, to Aino. AYYE has acted as a publisher for an independent student magazine, Aino. And Aino's task and role has been discussed in the community from time to time. It's a very, very passionate subject, just for the reason that in itself we budget a lot of money for media, and people have lots of depictions, lots of ideas on what kind of media you should create with these funds. Aino has at print about 4,500 magazines per magazine, which have been doled out at campuses and also AYYE houses. Journalism has value to AYYE because as a builder of community, and it's kind of a harbinger of fact-based discussion. Also, university democracy is good to keep in mind. That it's good that we have an independent and free media that is able to criticize both university and the student union if needs be. Independent media in this community creates critical discussion in this community as well, but it is a discussion that we as AYYE, with our own organizational communication, we can hardly create it by other means. The community has given about feedback that Aino hasn't really reached the member base. Aino's contents do not come together with the wishes of the readership, and that our members do not feel like Aino is their magazine and media. Okay, what happened in 2019? And we had the chief editor and the sub-editor of Aino submitted their resignation in the spring 2019. This gives us an interesting window now that we can discuss topics regarding to Aino or without that we discuss work relationships of individuals or conduct critique on their tasks and how they have completed those tasks. The Representative Council decided on the 4th meeting 2019 that Aino will have a hiatus, and during this hiatus we decided that we find out the following 3 questions. 1, will we continue with the current format of magazine? Will the different Aino's journalistic tasks be done in another format? Or number 3, will we do something else with the resources that we usually have had for the magazine? We hired an outside consultancy, Kaskas Media, to do the consulting, and we had the findings on the 9th meeting last year. Then the summary of the findings of the Kaskas Media. There were 3 main points. We discussed, or the findings discussed, the need of a student media. Is there need for a student media? Also, in another part, we discussed through a member survey and a dialogue event on the target group's ideas about the Aino magazine, and also a benchmark for the international student medias. And the board presented, based on this, that the Aino would continue as a magazine presented by the Kaskas Media summary survey. The Representative Council, however, felt that this survey did not actually answer the 3 questions posed. So how will the media continue? Will it happen in a different format? And will we do something else with the money? The Representative Council received, or actually gave this kind of survey, that this summary was not concrete, there was not enough information, and the dialogue event and member survey participation was too low, and we didn't receive enough data, that we didn't get a big picture on what actually people think about Aino. The Representative Council also felt that the media survey did not take a stance on the evaluation of the financial situation and the repercussions. In the 9th meeting last year, there was a proposal for change presented, that it was to prepare and return this to preparation with the title on how can we create student media with a lower price tag. And the deadline for the board's mandate was for 2020 June. It's interesting for the new Representative Council that how controversial theme this is, because the Kaskas Media survey on whether or not it should be approved, it was almost 50-50, but when we were actually discussing about the budget for 2020, there was a presentation of a good example on how this divides people. When we were discussing the budget of Aino magazine, the board's template was about 75,000 euro annually, but there was a proposal for change for 15,000 euro, which we thought like 15,000 is a good sum that would be enough to cover the extra survey. Votes were even. So, according to our regulations, we decided to put a coin toss, and the proposal for change was not passed. So, Aino's budget this year was 75,000 euros. Then moving on this spring of student media of 2020, where we have prepared with Laura, and last year media correspondent Leila. And what have we done and planned?
Just want to plan this further survey with based on the headline in the proposal made by the Representative Council, which was that how could we produce student media at a lower cost. We went through all the comments very thoroughly that we received in the meeting. Also, what Representative Council felt that was missing from Kaskas Media's report, and what we need to know in order to make the decision. And we intend to, now in February, to tender this report, send out a request for offer from 5 media houses on the survey, and the survey will be based mainly on the request that we want to know what would be different alternatives for producing Aino with varying costs. And from the media house that we select, we will ask them for clear alternatives for the expenses, expense structure, and publication format of Aino. And in this report, we want to learn about different channels for the production. So whether it's online, print media, or something else. Then also about taxation, tax incentives. So related to how much we can print and how much we get the incentives. Then about the costs related to print magazine and online magazine. It's about the delivery model. So the cost differences, that is the editor model. So what are the costs in a professional editorship and one based on volunteership. So the latest budget was 75,000 euros, so we'd like to have a clear different alternatives for this budget in the report to have kind of a different price categories for the future student media. So in order to get the information on what I just mentioned, that what we will get with 75,000 euros, we will also get other options for different budgets. So for example, if it would cost only 20,000 euros or 45,000 euros, then in the report it would also tell us that how much bang we can get for our buck. But also we need to keep in mind that we want to reduce the costs of student media in the long term. We've involved also the community committee in this call for tendering, call for bids in its drafting. We've discussed with the community committee about Aino's function within our community in order to make it clear what the function is when sending out these tendering offers. Then next, related to what will be done in the spring, this further survey, further report will be very much focused on costs, finances, but so in addition to that, we will also want to get opinions from our members about the subject, but we also want to get the ball rolling as fast as possible to get this independent further report about how to produce student media at a more affordable cost, to get it rolling as fast as possible, and then collect the members' opinions on the topic alongside this process. So the representing council will have both these materials when making the decision. So we are updating our strategy, AYYE, and then when updating strategy, we will ask our members their opinions, ideas, also about the student media through a member survey. So that way we could get more data about the needs of our members, their wishes, what they would like to see in a student media. But it would delay this decision-making process, because if the council wants to use this data from the members, then the decision has to be made later. It will delay the timetable that we had. So this that I just presented, this report made by a media house, will be completed by June. That was our deadline. But our strategy update, we will most likely not get it finished by June. Then also some comments from the working group on the topic before the actual discussion and your comments. I would like to make it clear to you that this year we will have to make a decision on the future of Aino. So the decision whether we will have a student media in the future or not. And also possibly the framework that if we have student media, then what will be the costs for it, the expenses in the future, and the budget. Last year, Koskas Media's report we had that. Then we have the additional report made this year. Then also the possible member survey done with the strategy update are all materials, kind of a memo that the representing council can utilize when making the decision. And we hope that they will be very useful to you. So to remind you about our resources. So if you feel that this proposal for the plan that I just presented, if you feel that it does not answer the question that was asked, or that it was a decision made by the representing council and you feel that you want to do something else than what the previous council did, now is the time to voice that opinion, so that we will not end up in a situation where we start going forward with this additional report and then find out that it's not what this representing council actually wants. Because the council has the highest decision-making power also in this regard, so we want this report to be as good as possible and serve your needs. Also, I'd like to remind you that all kinds of other things related to Aino details are defined in Aino's guidelines. So if we decide on that this year that we want to continue with the student media, then we should update the guidelines for Aino, which defines its purpose, task, implementation, action plan, and other details. So we will do that only after making the decision. Now, the discussion. We have two parts that I'd like to hear your opinions on. First is the timetable for the spring related to the strategy survey. Do you want to involve it in the decision making because it will delay the process? And also this planned additional report that I presented, does it answer the question that was asked by the representing council, that how can we do student media at a more affordable cost? So, first we get a discussion. I'll let you hear your comments on the topic of whether you want to support your decision making. Do you want us to have to do this member survey in connection with the updated strategy, even though it will mean that the decision on Aino's future will be delayed to autumn instead of June? And the second question, does this planned additional report answer the question how to produce student media at a more affordable cost? And are you satisfied with this, my presentation of the additional report? I'd also like to hear a preliminary vote on whether you are in general satisfied with this proposal for the additional report. But first, let's have the comments, questions about this first question, first topic. So, comments on this first question. Raise your hands if you want to speak. Slogan from Schisma. And the last representing council. We had this legendary coin toss related to the budget, which is a shame, since the budget should not be the kind of a channel that we use to decide on matters such as this, because we should first decide on these issues and then budget them. And this communicates what this kind of a shows is that there was such an even vote, is that the representing council hasn't felt that they have had the chance to influence the matter as much as they would have liked. And as was discussed last year, that how could we produce student media at a more affordable cost. But first, I think the groups should discuss on what we actually want from the student media. What it would be its style, publication style, whether it's totally independent, do we want to focus on quality as much as previously, or do we want to kind of media for everyone? I think these are questions that the groups should find a consensus about, and based on this, we should frame the question of what we want to get from this report. Because if the question is that can we do it at a more affordable cost? Well, of course we can, but I think the bigger question is that what the student media will be. So do you, Milja, feel that you and Laura have enough information about representative council's ideas on the subject so that you can move on with the tendering process to the media houses? Because this is a very broad question. Yes, I think one of the important point is that this proposal for change that was made in the last meeting of the previous representative council, it came very suddenly, so which means that this headline is kind of narrow, the question itself, but as already mentioned, we wanted to start from this headline, this question, that can we do this at a lower cost, to start the process. And this way we can also, there's a lot of opinions in that meeting that they want to have more kind of a concrete facts about the finances. And then of course we will have this value discussion. It's very important, as you mentioned, that the groups could talk about these issues. I think this kind of a value discussion could happen in connection with doing this additional report. So what I propose is that should we kind of try to have a preliminary discussion on the value questions for the next representative council meeting, because it really guides our financial decisions as well. Because I'm kind of afraid that if we have too many differing opinions on the subject and we don't recognize that, then we'll have just another survey which does not correspond to our needs. So I think we should have a preliminary discussion, even though the result would be that we have very differing opinions on the subject. It would be a very important thing to recognize before we can go to the concrete financial stuff in the report. Yes, we worked on this subject, as I mentioned, that the Kaskas Media report that we had previously and this additional report and also the member survey would be the material that we would give to the representative council in order to make the value decision. So we don't want to slow the process down by just going on with having the same discussion on whether student media has value for our community, because we had that discussion in many representative council meetings last year, and the result of that is this. But thank you for the comment, and if there's a lot of support for this comment, that you feel we should have a preliminary discussion at the next meeting, then of course we should take it into account. And we'd rather like to see that this additional report really corresponds to what you want to see, because we can delay the sending out the tendering, starting the tendering process. We'd rather do that than start with the tendering process and the report and then see in June that, well, this report doesn't really correspond to the representative council's needs. So, yes, I think it sounds very good. I don't think we're not in much of a hurry since we've gone this far. So just good luck with this. Filmar Voltti. I think we should really wait to get the 2020 member surveys, even though it would delay this process. Because even though we represent our members, we are not the members. And there are many different views that we should really take into account when making decisions such as this.
Regarding Julius's comment, if we weren't happy with the previous survey, could this be taken to the community committee, that they could have discussed these questions that answer the questions we actually want answers to, or where do the questions come from? They're the questions that survey answers. Yes, that if we have an outside party doing the survey, that they might not necessarily know enough about us. Or this is the reaction, and this is the reason why we have gone to the community committee this week, and we have discussed this. The committee has seen this competitive tendering template. So the committee has been involved in the value discussion, on part of the value discussion, so that what is the function of Aino magazine. And in the meeting we had a good discussion on the subject, but also the consensus was that Aino has value and the function is to be a collective force and to facilitate the societal and critique both against the student union and the university. Was there a discussion on what questions do we want to ask still? Like in addition to what placed in the competitive tendering, or? Well, yes, mainly that when comparing to the previous survey that we didn't get the answers that we wanted. Have we found the questions that we need to get the answers that we can make an informed decision? That we did not discuss with the committee that we personally have with Laura aimed to go through the representative council meeting and the ideas sparked from the Kaskas media survey. I'm very in agreement with Luukkanen that we would need the spirit of the groups and the member base before we start to work consultancy offices more. So I would like to note to the Representative Council that the survey by Kaskas Media was based towards that the fact that the presentation was a previous student media reporter, so I would take a very critical eye on the survey. Rather do it well once rather than do it several times half-assedly. Because if the surveys actually clash with one another, we might have to do a third one. So if you have any proposals for change, I would propose, based on Luukkanen and their speech, that we do a survey for our members, after which we'll have a value discussions and then the proposals for change. Can I actually answer enough that now your comment, Luukkanen proposed the discussion by groups differentiates from that of discussion of members, and what order should we proceed? Well, Luukkanen gave some blue lights. They are separate. They may move side by side, both the groups and the members we represent. Yes, because we have the results of the member survey, and then in the next meeting the groups should have an informed decision and an opinion, after which we can have the value discussion and we can then decide on these other measures. I also want to focus that if we want to move in this direction, it's that we mean that we cannot make this decision during 2020 because this strategic the survey, member survey done with the strategic update, we don't even have a timetable for that yet. We don't have a straight timetable for the member survey. We try and aim to have it up and running as fast as possible, but Luukkanen proposed a preliminary discussion for the next meeting. Is it the wish that we would have a preliminary discussion in the next meeting? At the same time, this member survey would progress as a process, of course, of which you will hear in the next meeting. It is exactly so that the member survey is not yet ready for next meeting, or that the next week we can't have any results. It's physically not possible. Julius has a request for the floor. If it's so that we get the survey towards members or to a more broad strategic outcome, I would trust that we here represent different parties of the student union, and we, with the discussion of the representative council and a joint preliminary discussion, first the groups, then the representative council, we can represent the view and vision of the student union. But we cannot do the entire survey without this preliminary discussion taking place. So if we have a member survey from which we received during the summer some results, then we can see how strongly it correlates. We have a mandate to discuss value questions. Definitely, I disagree in that we would always have the opportunity to discuss here and represent our member base's opinions on all matters. We are only a part of our members, and people end up in the representative council who have the different, certain kinds of opinion or some other kind of activism in the membership base. So it's really hard for us to represent people who are not active in our member base, which includes a large proportion of our people. So definitely we need the voice of the members heard. I definitely second Luukkanen that because of the elections, we have a democracy-based, or power base is based on democracy to represent our member base and to have the value discussion. And I feel that here we are once again threateningly going in the direction where we find things out here and there with a very rigid structure that we do these official surveys. This is kind of a part of an official strategic survey. It's kind of a slow thing that we need to slow our progress with the matter. And I feel, and I hope that all the other groups at the Reps Council could have a kind of what Luukkanen proposed, this structured work mode where groups amongst themselves find out their opinion, and then we could efficiently discuss issues here at the Representative Council. The groups could find out their own voters and their opinions. Not just that the student union always has to do the surveys and always with the polls and the queries. Thank you. Now the requests for the floor have been made. I will actually answer. Our plan has been to strive for the fact that the decision process would be as fast as possible, so that we wouldn't actually make a member survey based on which this cost framework situation would move as its own project, and the other one as its own project and would be ready for the Representative Council to make an informed decision. But if the proposal for change made by Luukkanen would be going forth as is, and this kind of competitive tendering starting, and this starting of the increased summary or the survey, if we want to postpone them, then I humbly ask that the Representative Council has a very, very clear framework for this discussion, and also the groups have clear frameworks for that the opinions that we want from the groups pertain essentially to the question of how can we create student media with a lower price tag. So this is what the Representative Council has requested from the board and given the board the mandate to find this out. And it's very hard to answer this question on how can we create it more cheap if the opinions from the groups are very value-based, if you understand what I'm getting at. Can you say that from the previous I know expenses or general student media expenses, how has it divided personnel expenses / print expenses? I can't, from on the top of my head, I can't just toss you a number, sorry. I can check while we get more questions. Other requests for the floor? If you have a personal matters discussion, you can make whisper them or have chats if you want to do personal stuff in the meeting. If you, are there other requests for the floor, Toby? For question 2. Yes, hello. From the Financial Committee Chair, I'd like to think of the financial side, but I hope that when we are finding things out, we would take into note the fact that how does it affect the budget. At the end of last year, we were discussing that possibly we need to save money from our current budget. So in effect, because this magazine is not happening in a vacuum, each euro that we use for this magazine means that we need to cut it from somewhere else. So I would wish that when we bring these proposals up front, then if we have an option of having the magazine with 75k, we would have an option of thinking that where do we actually cut the 75k from in order for us to get a budget result which is sustainable. The other option being 35k for the printing of the magazine, and where do we get the 35k from? So at the same time, we need to be able to save money for the student union, and while we are thinking of whether or not we will be continuing publishing at all, and we need to take the financial framework into effect here. Another request for the floor have been made. No request for the floor seems to be forthcoming. Thank you for this preliminary discussion. Then we will be having the wish that the Representative Council would give a preliminary will vote. So we make this vote. Based that, is the Representative Council in general satisfied with the proposed plan for an extensive survey? This is kind of the only question that I wish to ask. So, in a guiding vote, you should hopefully have your voting slips. Somebody with no slips, we have a question. Microphone. Would it give more to us if we could vote regarding somehow pertaining to the model that klockan gave? Because based on this question, I would think that we need to add vote red if klockan's model was good. I would personally comment that if the Representative Council clearly answers this question no, clearly, so that this current model that I have proposed that we would progress with this competitive tendering plan is not satisfiable to the Representative Council, well, the plan that would move with a quick timetable to the media houses, that if you are happy with this plan, then vote for that. And if the answer is no, then I would like to hear how we proceed. So questions pertaining to this particular vote. Does this proposed plan contain the preliminary discussion? No. Okay. So to clarify here, like Milja has proposed, what are we planning? If you see that this current plan, which has been created from the discussion of the previous Representative Council, is a good direction, you will vote yes, which is blue. Then you have a white, which means you have no stance on the issue, which is empty, and red, which is no. Are everybody clear with the procedure? Technique as a comment. Will this be shown on the stream? Yeah, go for it. Let it rip. So this is a preliminary vote, which is just a public opinion. This is not an official, this is not a decision. This is just an opinion given by the Representative Council. It's very clear. So You have your placards. So start off, ask. Yeah. So all placards up. Yes or no? Yeah. This is very clear. But the answer is no. Next up, the European Council, based on this discussion, is it clear that what is the European Council's will if this current summary will not be, or current proposal will not be implemented? It is pretty clear. I would like clarifications on, for example, our groups, an agreement in that you would like to see the current competitive tendering, the draft. The idea of which is that the groups would like to give opinions on what from the survey is missing, or is the idea that we just want something else altogether. I would like concrete advice on what I will be doing during my working hours for the next 4 weeks. It would be really nice to be able to know what I should do in my work. So to clarify, what is the focus? I would propose that we will vote a second vote so that we could, this was actually a very good plan, but it would include that we would move the current plan by 1 month, and in the next meeting we would have a preliminary discussion with people who have prepared for what we actually want from this survey. If we got the current competitive tendering, it would be really good discussion material. It is possible. And if I can reiterate on my part and that of Laura, is that, like said, definitely we may move this sending of the competitive tendering by 4 weeks so we can finalize it and file it down. That the survey would actually answer the correct questions before, so that you can do an informed decision. You have any requests for further commentary, or are there other comments or requests to the floor? So my wish, based on this meeting, well, we can't do it in this meeting, but rather hopefully we could get some written instructions on what kind of frameworks, on what kind of systems different groups have in place. It's really hard to answer the question that to create this plan and competitive tendering for the excess or the extensional survey. If groups think like, okay, this is a good plan, but we still miss different kinds of effects of different kinds of paper to the price, and then another group is giving very value-based commentary and more detailed stuff regarding Aino and the decisions made. And on my point, I have to comment that the board has proposed its own preparation, that if you have specific additions or something else or wishes for a change, I really do hope that it would come from the group or a representative council member in written form. That they would actually bring forth the wishes on what you actually wish to actuate and change, so we can actually get things here up for your decision. Okay, thank you. I could also further comment, I'm actually not there, but Monday we had the group chair people meeting, where the atmosphere was that this kind of presentation was good and it would be going, but if this is different envisioned by the Reps Council, it would be prudent for the groups to discuss amongst themselves. Thank you. I can maybe have a, do we have a microphone here?
Well, proposal to help with work. Maybe Representative Luukkanen could put this in writing, this proposal, to the Representative Council mailing list, and if some group comments that this is not good, then discuss in the same thread about it. Samalla from Luova. I think for the future, if you have preliminary discussions in future meetings, it would be good that we know beforehand that we will have a preliminary vote, because I think that at least my group thought that this is more just a news as stated in the agenda, not an actual vote. So that's why there may be kind of differing opinions than the opinions that were voiced in the group chairperson meeting. Just to be clearer on what we will discuss at the meeting. And let us know if you want to hear our opinions this way. Yes, this is not a preliminary discussion, so we will not make a decision. This is just a kind of hear the recent news, so that we can also have a discussion, and that you will be convey this information. Slamme from ProArte. At the group chairperson meeting, I was present myself. We didn't have any. We just had to listen. We didn't have any kind of presentation or anything on the subject. And my opinion is that I think that we can discuss about this, for example, in the mailing list, so that the consensus on that people will know that there will probably be disagreements, so it will not be a surprise. I personally think that moving on to the emailing list, voicing opinions there could be a good option here. Thank you. Good comment on what that preparatory work is always important. If there are no further requests for floor, anything else, then I will say thank you and closing discussion. Making the decision, the proposal that was that the representative council decided to record the student media news. So we will decide to do this. Closing item 11, moving to item 12, appointment of the representative council members to the scholarship distribution committees. Hello everyone. I'm Krisu, member of the board responsible for the community, communications and volunteers and digitalization. I think that's enough about me. Let's move on to the actual topic. So, the scholarship distribution committees. First, a bit of background. AYYE has numerous different funds. So the producer and financial committee handles them. And so we have money to give. The Representative Council has decided back in the day that we'll distribute this money based on 3 different criteria to support the internalization possibilities of students who are not that financially well off. Then also want to thank people who are active in our community, who have developed our community, and also reward people about, I can't see very well, reward students for balancing out their student life as well as their studies, so rewarding them for their good study success. And because of this, we have in our regulations states that we have 3 distribution committees. So we have exchange, community and study scholarships and the distribution committees for each one. So here, in short, how they are actually distributed. So for the exchange scholarship, with 50-50 for communal activities and studies, when taken into account the criteria. And the sum is based on travel expenses and living expenses in the corresponding country. For the community scholarship, it's 100% based on community activities, and the size of the scholarship is that 20 best candidates receive it. It's usually 500 euros for each. And then the study scholarship, the criteria is 40-60, the division between community and study. And the size of the scholarship is defined in the same way as in the community scholarship. If you're more interested in it, you please go through the scholarship guidelines. And here are the compositions of the committees. We have a producer in each one, producer Nurmi, in all three as a member of a committee. Then each also have one board member. For the exchange, the person responsible for international affairs, that is Imran. And for the community scholarships and study scholarships, we will have the person responsible for community affairs, which is me. And each committee also have 2 members from the representing council. So now we are deciding on them. And the tasks of the committees, well, they are to calculate, fix, and unify the scoring of the applicants, because applicants apply for themselves and report what they have done in and for the community and also their studies. And it's always not as easy as it sounds, so there is kind of a room for interpretation when going through the applications. For example, when deciding whether something is heavy or light, some task. So the community needs to kind of harmonize that, for example, a certain task is deemed as heavy for all applicants. That has the same kind of emphasis. And that all points are calculated evenly and correctly. Then committees, also because in the regulations, in the guidelines, it says that there may be also exceptions. If, for example, a student is financially very not well off, then it's the committee's task to decide what it means for students. If someone is particularly poor, so to speak. And also the committees make sure that the process goes according to regulations. And so what does it require for the committees? Doodles to decide on meetings, hopefully 1 meeting, except 2 meetings for the exchange committee, because they also decide on in autumn when there's another application round. So exchange scholarship has 2 application rounds and the others only have 1. And the meeting usually takes about 3 to 4 hours and it's held in May. And for the exchange scholarship committee, the second meeting will be held either in November or December. Then the committees will also verify the decision, and also you will receive good snacks and drink at the meetings. And you will also get 5 points if you will apply for the scholarships yourselves. As the same as you get if you're active in committees, you also get 5 points when applying for this yourself. Also, I want to apologize for the group chairpersons that we haven't yet communicated this to them, but we've sent a message that there are a lot of synergies between these different committees. So there are the kind of the same community points calculated in each committee, so it's very easy if there are the same people calculating these points. It would be easier, the process, if we had 2 persons which are in all 3 committees, not 6 persons in total. This will also help in harmonizing the scoring. We have these candidates. I hope it's all. So for exchange scholarship, no one has signed up for that. But for community, we have 4 candidates. For study scholarship, 1, and then 2 people who said that they can be in. It doesn't matter which committee, that they're available for all. So now I'd like to propose that we'd have only 2 candidates filling all these 6 seats. But if this is not possible, we can also select 6 people, then it just means more work. Thank you. So for the first time, there are several more applicants than there are seats. Previously it's been difficult to get candidates, so we have this kind of a positive problem. So I'd like to that maybe the groups could... Does someone want to withdraw their candidacy in order to get the seats filled in the community scholarship without a vote? Yes, so one person withdrew, and also Ikonen will also withdraw. So how many people we have? 2, 1 and 2. Exchange 0, studies 1, community 2 and 2, which are open to everyone, to all committees. But yes, I know that is someone available for several committees. It would be nice to know if someone. So the wish is that that the person could be a part of several committees, especially in the community and study scholarship. Any other requests for floor? I've received information that Mikael Limatainen is available for all committees. So we have 2 persons available to all committees. We have this kind of positive problem that we have more candidates than we have seats. A historical moment for the scholarship committees. Yes, also Filman also withdraws his candidacy, which means that we have Limatainen available for all committees, Kainalainen for community, Gano for all committees, if I understand correctly, are available for all 3. Yes, request for floor. Also received information that Kitty is available for all committees. So we have 3 people who are available for use for all 3. And Filman is still also available to anyone. Okay. Very active people, it's nice to see. So, what do you wish? What would be the optimal situation? Do you have any kind of requests? To only have 2 people? Yes, maybe just 2. So 2 people in all of the 3 committees would be the most optimal situation. It was minimize my and others' workload. So, to make it clear, how it would reduce the workload is that because we will go through all the candidates and what they have submitted in their application, so it's kind of stupid to have this discussion with different people. So it'd be good if we had the same people in all committees. So we have Kitty, Mikael and Apurva are available for all 3 committees. So it would be best if we would find 2 people who are part of each committee, so someone would withdraw from their candidacy or something else. So, we first decide whether we will select 2 people to each committee or 2 people who are part of each 3 committees, meaning that we will also only select 2 people, because it would reduce the workload and improve the flow of communication. Good comment, microphone, yes. But we have people for all committees, so I don't see the problem. People who want to be in the committees that they wouldn't be. Do you mean that would it be okay if we had 3 people in each committee and it would be the same 3 people in each committee? What does the regulations say? Because the guidelines, the regulations for the committees says that 2 members per committee. So we could, for example, have that 2 people are in 2 committees and 2 are in 1 committee, but there needs to be 2 representative council members in the committee. But it says that the maximum, yes, some maximum number of members in 1 committee is 2. There cannot be 3 members from the representative council in 1 committee. So only 2 per group, because this is stated in the regulations. So the way I see it, we have 1 person more than there is room in the committees. So to suggest that as the preliminary proposal was that we had 3 committees and each would contain 2 members of the representative council. But it would be coherent to move on with this. So maybe decide on whether we will vote on whether to have 2 people, so 1 will be left out, or whether we have 3 people in total and they will divide themselves among the committees. So the preliminary vote with the slips. So the red slip is that we will have only 2 persons and the 3rd person will be left out, and blue means that we will select 2 per each committee. So, as background information, the representative council, we didn't prepare for this amount of candidates for the committees. So, if we can kind of negotiate without a vote. So we have 6 or 7 candidates, but we have 4 people actually. No, actually 5. Not 4. You can have a list of the people. So say that if you are not. So Kainulainen, Liimatainen, Apurva, Virtanen and Filman. So 1 people left out. I'd like to remind you that if you are in the committees, you cannot apply for scholarship yourself during that time, because it may affect someone's decision. So just as a reminder. So we have 4 people, 4 persons willing to be members in the committees. Would we have the same synergy benefits if everyone would be in 2 committees? You have 3 persons? No, 4. If I would be in the community and others want to be in several, so It's excellent. If there are 4 people, it's very positive, so I would see this as a great proposal. So 4 people. So we have 2 people who want to be in, or are 3 people who are willing to be in several committees. Then if we select 2 who are in several committees out of these 3. After this kind of proposal, we can of course change it. This is a preliminary proposal I just made. So Kitty and Emil wanted to be in the Community Scholarship Committee. So is this okay? Yes, is this okay? So Apurva will be in the study committee. The first one is exchange, second is community, third is studies, and then there are the names. This is kind of not the same kind of synergy benefits, because if we had in the community and study, we had just 1 meeting, because there's so much overlap. We cannot do it now, because there are totally different people in community and study committees. So this is kind of the same if we had 6 people in total. This is a problem that the committees have marketed themselves too well. But yes, the situation is that this is kind of the same as if there were 6 persons. So that is very clear. Requests from floor, comments.
Just need some clarification. Can I still be in the committee if I'm working part-time for Aalto-University? Yes.
Aalto-University?
Yes.
Yes, you can. Okay. Yes. But Aalto-University and Student Union are very different.
Yes.
Selvä. Eli jos ei ole
Okay.
puheenvuoropyyntöjä, niin sulle on
Now request for floor, closing discussion. So, we'll now make the decision. We will select the following persons to the scholarship distribution committees. So, they are there. So, to the exchange scholarship distribution committee, Liimatainen and Kainulainen. For the community scholarship distribution committee, Kaimulainen and Filman, and for the study committee, Apurva and Mikael Liimatainen. Just been decided. Closing item 12. Moving to item 13, other emerging matters. Do we have any other emerging matters? In Valti, we've discussed and thought about that. What is the situation of the archivist for AYYE? Because we don't have an archivist at the point, even though it's a legal obligation to have this person. So what will the board do? When will we have an archivist once again? Yes. And for this archivist, we've started recruitment, and also preliminarily have agreed on with a certain person that they will start in this task. I cannot disclose anything further at this point, but we are moving forward with the issue. So, not to worry, we take care of our legal obligations, so we will have an archivist. If everything goes according to plan, they will start next Monday. So.
March, so next month on Tuesday, I believe, I'm proposing with ESN Aalto an open invitation for mainly international students, but all students, to come and talk to AYYE representative council members. At the moment, of course, it's only me that's going to be present there, but the idea is to create an open dialogue to help our board get better ideas on what kind of changes we can make. And so I'm kickstarting this initiative. If you want to join that particular one, I would be more than happy to have other RepCo members there. And if not, you can follow my lead and make your own events in your own guilds as well. So just putting it out there.
Any other emerging matters? Thank you for this. Lammi from ProArte. Can I say that the air conditioning here, ventilation is not very good. Maybe if you could do something that we could have air conditioning also in the evening here, because people are falling asleep here at this hour. Yes, we will look into the matter. Yes. As I sit here on my lectures, it's true that the ventilation here is not very good. If someone knows, then you can flip the switch to get the air conditioning on. That's what we informed the university, the janitors. Thank you. No other emerging matters. Closing item 13, moving to item 14, closing the meeting. It's 8:20 p.m. Actually 8:21, closing the meeting.